Now, though, on the Western Hotline, Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. As the Bills go into Week 18, we'll talk about the Eagles game and some playoff matchups too. But, Joe, I don't know, you got an answer? What's either your number one memory yourself from being at the stadium or the loudest that you can ever remember it being?
Well, my favorite memory is always going to be my first time going to a Bills game. It was in the mid-'90s, December game against the Patriots. The Bills lost the game, but just my first time, in there and got to see Jim Kelly with my own eyes. And remember my dad made us a bunch of sandwiches. They were cold and wet and soggy and nasty, but it was a super cool experience. But I also think my goodbye to Highmark, week 1 against the Ravens.
Yeah.
Really, really cool game to be at. So, that's my favorite game, but certainly the first time in there is my favorite.
That's a good, riding off into the sunset game for you. And go into that game.
Well, the problem is I was very careful. I was like, well, I want to go to a few more games, but I think this is good. I think I'm good here.
Yeah, that's a good one. So, Joe, looking back, we'll get to some playoff stuff. But on the matchup we just saw against Philadelphia, recapping a little bit from your perspective, how much of Sunday's loss to you was squarely on Allen himself making a bunch of errors, including obviously the obvious one at the end of the game, but even before that, how much do you think it was on Allen on Sunday?
Well, I think a lot of it. Probably the leading reason would be why. The turn down that turns into a sack, the failed red zone sequence where they go they get to the 7-yard line, they can't score. People forget Josh Allen left that ball behind Khalil Shakir on second down. If that ball's out in front of him, he walks in for a touchdown. He has to reach back and slow his momentum, and he's able to get tackled there. You also can't run the ball on that the James Cook run in that sequence. That you had 5 to block 6. The unblocked guy makes the play. You got to get out of that play. And then in fourth down, I mean, his primary's not available, but then rolling to the right, I mean, you had the check down to Cooks. You had Ty Johnson across the middle of the field. You chose to run the ball and couldn't get in. I mean, that was a huge mistake too. The 3rd and 8 sack where he lost 19 yards and kept his eyes on the bunch set and it was never going to uncover. He had Ty Johnson wide open on the check down. He never gets there. It takes a 19-yard loss. And then, of course, not being able to hit that throw to win the game against, in the 2-point play. I mean, those are catastrophic mistakes. And foil that against Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts played horribly in the game. But you know what Jalen Hurts didn't do? He didn't make back-breaking mistakes, right? He just threw a bunch of incomplete passes. Josh Allen took 5 sacks and lost 51 yards. Jalen Hurts took 1 sack and lost 2. I mean, that's what it came down to is sometimes these games in the NFL, I know it's boring to say it, sometimes they're lost more than they're won. And Josh Allen lost the game by the mistakes that he made, and Jalen Hurts didn't make any plays, but he also didn't lose the game, and that's why they were able to get out of there with a 1-point win.
Yeah, it's not like Hurts wasn't under pressure all day, right? Like how many times he escaped a sack. And a lot of times he did just end up throwing it away. But you're right, like he avoided negative plays. Would you also consider the play where Cooks is running a little bit behind the corner and Allen puts it on his outside shoulder instead of his inside a mistake on Allen? Or is that one where it's tough to really know kind of who that's on?
Yeah, that's a deep throw down the field. I have plenty of criticism for Josh Allen, but I'm not going to go too hard there. I mean, It's still a player. You're developing chemistry. It's a ton of air yards on the throw. It's wet, windy conditions. Okay, normal misfire that you can live with.
Yeah. Are there signs of the Eagles game, the Houston game, like these games where Allen's getting hit mostly, and we know he's taking more sacks this year? Does it make you feel any sort of way about specific teams in the playoffs? Like, do you think we have reached a point where we might know what the worst type of matchup is for the Bills offense and what a defense can do to them?
Well, I think you are going to be nervous about teams that can get quick pressure on Josh Allen, of course, especially where Josh Allen has been more big play hunting this year, has had harder times getting out of the pocket to scramble. Yeah, teams that can get that quick pressure and, force him to maybe rush his process or, be a little bit stuck between running or staying in, I think that's going to affect him. So usually those teams struggle to defend the run. So that's kind of a counterpoint to that. So you think about like Denver. Certainly I'm concerned about Denver's pass rush, but I think the Bills can run the ball on Denver. There's that give and take to it. But, there's been plenty of times where I've had concerns about things about Josh Allen entering the postseason, but then postseason Josh Allen takes off, right? And he's I don't know, probably statistically the best quarterback in NFL history in the playoffs. And, I think that he goes into another stratosphere, and I'm excited to see it this year.
Joe Marino with us on the Western Hotline. Did you think he looked limited by his right foot injury at all, or if so, how much?
Well, the offensive coordinator told you that they were checking in, and it was affecting, their play calling and things that they were doing. And so Josh Allen's never going to tell you that anything is affecting him, ever, right? It's just not in his DNA. The guy had a broken hand in week 1 last year, and he made it like nothing ever happened, right? And that's just not who he is. And not like Justin Herbert, where everyone's got to know he's got a broken wrist or hand. It's not like Daniel Jones, where everyone's got to know he's got a broken leg. He's not going to give you those excuses. And so you can't listen to Josh when it comes to that stuff. But, I think the offensive coordinator made that pretty clear that it was something they were having to deal with throughout the course of the game.
One other thing from the offense on Sunday against Philly, how much stock would you take in the game Cooks had? Because even the previous 2 games, we remember the drops, but he was open. So, I don't know, do you have optimism right now that he could really give them something as a separator with speed once we get to, especially, the playoff games?
100%, Joe. I mean, you said it. He's been an available target down the field consistently since joining this team. And the issue was just not catching the football. Well, Brandon Cook's a pro receiver. It's been around for a long time. I think you can look at the circumstances of, hey, you're dumped into a new situation late in the season, new quarterback that you never played with. Yeah, you got to kind of get that figured out. And so I think the important takeaway was that he was available down the field. And then we saw that turn into amazing catches against the Eagles. And that's something, it's a low bar to clear, but, I think he has elevated the verticality of this passing game. And then even what I really enjoyed was some of the rhythm completions that happened later in the game, just hey, drop back passing, outbreaker, get open, catch the ball towards the sideline. That stuff was really refreshing to see. So I do think that Brandon Cooks can help this offense and, unfortunately low bar to clear, but I'm glad he's here.
On the defense, it was an incredible performance. You mentioned no completions from Jalen Hurts in the second half. How surprised were you that they did have that performance? Because they were missing a lot of bodies.
Yeah, going into the game, I thought the Bills' back 7 matched up really well with the Eagles' weapons. And the Eagles are not everybody eats, right? They throw the ball to 4 guys. That's it. And I thought Benford was a good answer for Brown. I mean, he had handled Metcalf and Chase and Nico Collins in recent weeks. I thought this was something he would be able to handle. I thought he did a great job. I thought the White-Harrison duo was a good counter for DeVonta Smith. The Bills have given up the least catches this year to tight ends across the NFL. And Milano and Bishop, I thought, were good answers for Goddard. The question I had was, could they get enough pressure? Could they scheme up pressure? And I thought McDermott, Babbage, they had Nielsen, they had a great plan. Because with Jalen Hurts, he's not one of those quarterbacks where you have to be overly concerned with how you get pressure. You just have to get it, right? You can rush extra bodies, you can blitz, you can do a lot of things. He's not like Joe Burrow, blitz Burrow, he's going to kill you. It's just not Hurts. And so the Bills did a great job of incorporating DBs, linebackers into the rush plan. You saw multiple pressures from Dorian Williams and Shaq Thompson and Matt Milano and even Taron Johnson. You had safeties. That was a big part of it. Cam Lewis was involved in that plan as well. And so I thought the Bills did a good job of diversifying the rush plan, stunting up front, and then knowing that you had matchups that could work on the back end despite them being a very talented group of receivers. So I didn't know how the rush plan would come together, especially with some of the injuries at D-tackle. But they came up with the right scheme, executed well, and obviously suffocated that Eagles passing offense.
And then what about the rush defense? They've looked better this year at times when Shaq Thompson's been in there. They held Barkley to under 4 yards a carry. Good sign for them going into the postseason if they were to play another team with a really good running back?
Well, here's the thing: I think the Bills had a great plan to defend the run against Philadelphia, but I don't think it's a translatable plan against other teams. I think Philly had some unique variables with their rushing offense. And I'll start with the right side of their offensive line. Fred Johnson at right tackle is not a starter. And Tyler Seen at right guard is not a good player, right? So you had 2 below average players on that right side, and you have a center in Cam Jurgens who's supremely athletic, but he's soft anchor and he's small. And so the Bills, I thought, were very specific to how they attacked that side, that center to right tackle, with a lot of stunts. They would slant, they would do gap exchanges, and that really threw off their timing and was able to get kind of free runners into the backfield. And then you have Saquon Barkley. And Saquon Barkley is as physically dynamic of a running back that has ever come into the NFL. But I've been saying this since Penn State. He's a better athlete than he is football player. He's a guy that has a lot of variance with his runs. He big play hunts with his runs. And he's not a guy that has like a lot of natural feel for navigating congestion around him. And if you can get him to slow his feet in the backfield and stop his surge, you're going to have a lot of success. And the Bills had a very specific game plan to make that happen. You get population of the ball, you get Saquon Barkley down. Now, look, you might be listening to this and thinking, oh, my God, that's criticism for Saquon Barkley. Watch the tape. Realize the way that he plays the game. It's not orthodox. And, of course, he can rush for 2,000 yards in a season because he's a freak show of an athlete. And when he has the offensive line that was in place last year that was blasting open holes, he can hit home runs. But still, there's a snap-to-snap consistency with Saquon. I thought the Bills had the right idea to kind of bring out the worst in his game and really did a great job bottling him up.
Yeah, interesting. Tell me if you think this is wrong. It almost kind of sounds like the way you're laying it out that maybe like the things that make James Cook so good consistently are the things that maybe Barkley is lacking?
Yes. I think James Cook is a guy that understands run concepts, understands his aiming points, and can really navigate and slither and has a really good feel for space. Saquon Barkley is an unbelievable athlete. Like, he doesn't make sense. The build, the power, the explosiveness, but there's still a feel to getting the football, pressing the line of scrimmage, understanding the concept, and then, getting to green grass. And Saquon is a guy that he's more reliant on his physical gifts, right? And so when those tracks that he needs are compromised, it becomes a difficult situation for him. He does stop his feet. He becomes unsure. He becomes undecisive, and you can get tackles for loss. I mean, I think he has the third highest rate of runs in the NFL this year that go for less than a yard, like 25%. The metrics back up what I'm saying. The film backs up what I'm saying. I've been saying this since he's been at Penn State. And so that's what I'm saying about this specific game. The Bills had the right plan to kind of expose that. And, that's why I'm really happy with that defensive run-stopping performance. It's not going to be translatable against other teams. And so I think we celebrate for what it is. You give a hat tip to the coaching staff and say, you did a really good job of figuring out the right plan, especially overcoming no Daquan Jones, and got it done. But I don't know that that's going to translate against other opponents with consistency.
Good stuff. Joe Marino from the Locked On Bills podcast, built Locked On Bills Squad Show as well, with Jeremy White as well throughout the week. So have you thought a lot about potential playoff matchups yet, and maybe what you might like or not like? Especially, Joe, it feels like at this point the odds show that Jacksonville is their most likely opponent. There actually is a look-ahead line already at FanDuel. That's their most likely opponent. I think New England is probably second. Do you see a big difference personally between Jacksonville, New England? You could throw Denver, Pittsburgh, Baltimore in, but especially Jacksonville and New England.
I feel the most indifferent than I ever have about the path this year. I don't think there's material differences in all of the possibilities for the Bills. I do find myself preferring New England. Number one, I'd love the opportunity to end their season. That would really kind of nullify their division title. Like, who cares? Oh, you won the East. Well, the Bills ended your season. I want that opportunity. And I think the Bills match up pretty well with New England. I'd like to see it. I'd like to take Josh Allen and the experience of this team into Foxborough and see what that looks like, where, I think Jacksonville is just a little bit more dynamic of an operation. They think they're a little more dynamic at receiver. I think they have more talent in terms of their edge rushers. Their run defense is really good, Jacksonville, but I think you can kind of throw on them. I think one thing about good run defenses is the Bills do have a unique run scheme with the multiplicity with James Cook. So, I don't get super nervous about a team being able to completely take away the Bills' rushing offense. So, I mostly want the chance to go play New England, but I do feel like it's probably going to be Jacksonville, and I think that's a unique challenge, and it's going to come down to game plans and coaching. And can the Bills have the right idea, and can they have the right call at the right time? It feels like a tough battle this year. Like, the overall path seems wide open, but the Bills are going to have to go on the road pretty much probably for the whole thing, and they're 0-5 under McDermott on the road in the playoffs. They're 4-15 as a franchise on the road in the playoffs. So it's an uphill battle, but The Bills are showing up with Josh Allen and more experience than any other team in these playoffs.
So that would, I'm assuming, make it true that you would be with the consensus that there's really nothing worth chasing too hard on Sunday against the Jets. I mean, they might be able to beat the Jets with all of their backups. But who, I guess, comes to mind for you as like priority to make sure that they're resting Sunday? I mean, Allen is obviously top of the list. Is there anybody else that you would think like these are guys that they should prioritize resting?
Well, yeah. First of all, I think it's going to be hard to lose the Jets. That's I don't think there's a lot of fight in that team. But I'm not as totally on board with sitting Allen. I think this offense has had massive execution issues the last 2 weeks against Cleveland and Philly, whether that's protection issues, drops, missed reads, missed throws. I'd love for them to play a little bit and find some rhythm going into the postseason, even if it is against the Jets. I just don't like the way this offense is playing right now. So I'd be willing to play them for a few series. When it comes to the players that I think are priorities to sit, I think they're mostly defensive players. Matt Milano, Jordan Poyer, Christian Benford, Joey Bosa, Daquan Jones. Don't need to see those players on Sunday. And then offensively, I would sit Dalton Kincaid. I would sit Spencer Brown, make sure that those guys are ready to go for the playoffs. But I'd like to see Josh play a little bit and find some rhythm and get that 40th touchdown, maybe give James Cook a few carries to make sure he gets that rushing title. But I think most of the rest needs to happen on defense because, I mean, how many times have we gone through these playoffs? No Matt Milano. Christian Benford's injured in an elimination game. Bosa, his availability in the playoffs has always been the concern. Like, oh, you're here. Let's go. Poyer's playing through a hamstring or has a hamstring deal. Daquan Jones with a calf. Give these guys the rest. Get that offense humming a little bit and give yourself a chance to have some momentum. That's the way I see it. I know many people will disagree with that, but I don't know. Football players play football. So I want to see these guys go out there and find some momentum going into the postseason on the offensive side of the football.
Joe Marino from the Locked On Bills podcast. Herd Mentality. You can find the link to the Substack and Subtext and more on his website, thejoemarino.com. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate the time as always, and we'll talk in 2026.
All right, guys. Thank you, and go Sabres.
Go Sabres. 10 in a row tonight, maybe. We'll see. 8 o'clock tonight. Thanks to Joe for his time with us. The Sabres playing the Dallas Stars. They are as big an underdog tonight as they have been this entire streak.